Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Disc Review, the show where we give you our unfiltered opinions with absolutely no authority given to us. My name is Maxwell Allen and my co-host is Matthew McDonald.
Hello, we're here for prevailed.
We are here for prevailed and we got a special guest for you today, my little brother Simon Allen. Simon, say what's up.
What's up, guys? Oh, you gonna leave me hanging like that? Yo, what the...
You can like, I don't know,
Hey,
say...
Yeah, I'm Simon. I'm Max's little brother, and Matthew's my cousin, too. So we were doing Prevailed this week, and that's a band that all three of us have really liked growing up. So I thought they invited me on. It sounded like a fun experience to talk about a band I really like, so...
Yeah, all three of us have definitely shared an interest in Pierce the Veil. I kind of wanted to get both of your takes on Pierce the Veil and kind of just like where you sit. I'll start with you, Matt. Like, when did you get into Pierce the Veil, and kind of where do you fall now?
Yeah, I definitely got into Pierce the Veil through you. I remember just hearing some songs that you were playing just for yourself, and I was somewhat interested, but not into the heavy music scene. And it kind of took me probably a couple years to warm up to that style and realize that I can just listen to whatever I want. And ended up really being a big fan, probably one of the first bands I got really into and cared a lot about what they put out and their new releases. And Misadventures is important to me because this is the only one that they released when I was already a fan, and I was looking forward to it, hearing singles, and I listened to this record a lot in high school, so a formative album for me, a lot of memories associated with all these songs, and excited to talk about it.
Yeah, you brought up something like, you said it took a couple of years for you to realize that you can kind of just listen to whatever you want and not really care about what genre it's in, and I think that that's something that took me a long time as well. Realizing that, like, hey, I can listen to like pop and like softer stuff and enjoy it and not feel like I'm betraying the music that I usually listen to.
Yeah.
But Simon, tell us about your interest in Pierce the Veil, where it started, and kind of where you are with it now.
Oh, I feel like I got into this kind of music like a ton of other people because I didn't really care for any of it, and then I started listening to Linkin Park, and that's like a gateway drug band to like some heavier bands. But this was definitely the first, I don't know if you'd say heavy or like post-hardcore band that I ever listened to. And kind of like Matt, it's the first band that I actually followed, and I remember I wasn't listening to them when they released Collide with the Sky, but I was listening to them before they released Misadventures, so I remember that was pretty hype waiting for that album, and it took forever, but I think it paid off. But as of right now, it's been so long since they released music, it's kind of hard to still call yourself like a diehard fan for this band, but I do find myself coming back to this album or older albums kind of just sporadically.
Yeah, it's like they haven't released music in so long. It's like, no, I'm a fan, I swear. I haven't listened to Misadventures in 4 years, but I swear I love
Yeah.
Well, let's address the elephant in the room before we talk about the rest of or the tracks on this record. Before Misadventures was released, Pierce the Veil released something called the Misadventures Medley. Is that what it's called?
The Misadventures album medley. I have some opinions about this. I'm glad I wanted to talk
Yeah, why don't
about
you
this.
take that away?
Listen, I didn't know this wasn't a thing. I remember when this came out, and I was really hyped for the album, and I was like, a medley, like, of course, I want to get, a sneak peek. It's kind of like a trailer for a movie, it felt. And I didn't know this wasn't a thing that people do. And there's a reason they don't do it, because it's terrible. I couldn't listen to the song once it eventually came out without just looking for that one section and thinking that... And I had all these built-up notions of what I thought each song was going to be based on the little... 5-second little sample they gave out of it, and it kind of just ruins going in blind. And I listened to it not knowing that this was something I should not listen to, and I've never seen anyone else do something like this.
Yeah, I've never seen it either. It had been, what, 4 years since they had
Hmm.
last released any music when Misadventures came out. And so I had been waiting for 4 years to hear new Pierce the Veil music. And then they dropped that album medley. And I felt like I listened to the whole album
Yeah.
on a speed run. It was like blasted me so hard that I feel like it definitely affected the way that the album sits with me to this day,
Yeah.
probably, and especially off of the first listen.
I agree.
But Simon, what did you think about that?
So yeah, that's funny that you bring this up because before you guys talking about it right here, I honestly had no clue that this was a precursor. I thought it was just some trash like medley
Okay.
that they threw together after. So it makes a little more sense, but it's still bad. Like if you've listened to it, it's not enough to understand the song, but they
Yeah.
still throw it at you back to back. So, I mean, I guess if you were really, really hyped for this coming out and you don't really, I don't know, I could see it being nice to hold you over until it comes out, but I don't think it's worth it. I think if they dropped another one, I would not listen to it until the album came out.
Yeah.
I agree.
That it did too much damage than good, and it didn't even come out early enough. Like their album was probably coming out in like a week or something when they dropped it. I could wait the week, you know. And knowing now, I would just choose not to listen. But I had no idea when I was 16 and this album was coming out.
Well, you live and you learn, I guess.
Hmm.
But let's go on and let's just dive right into this beloved Pierce the Veil album, Misadventures. The first track is "Dive In," which is kind of appropriate because we're just diving right in here. And I think that "Dive In" is a pretty dang solid opener, considering its length and it has lots of ups and downs, some heavy parts, some really soft and quiet and beautiful parts. And so I think that as far as openers go, I really enjoyed this, and it got me very excited to listen to the rest.
Yeah, I agree. What I was most impressed about going back into this record was that just how varied a lot of these songs are, and this one especially just got a bunch of different parts to it. That opening verse is pretty iconic, I would say, to Pierce the Veil fans, and I think they've always been really good at writing melodies, and a lot of their chorus is really strong. This chorus is really good, and I like how this song builds up in energy a lot over the course of its run, and it really peaks at that final chorus and just instantly cuts off into this piano outro. I think that's really interesting music making there.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah. And Simon, don't feel like you need to wait. Jump right in whenever you're ready
Yeah.
to add something as well.
Yeah, no, not at all. I just wanted to hear what you guys thought about this because I totally agree. I think, especially the intro guitar is just, I feel like it just continues the hype building from before the album came out. Like, okay, they dropped the album, you start listening, and then it just hits you with this guitar that doesn't really seem like they've given it all to you yet. And so I think it was a really great opener to start like that. I think the different parts of the song where it's going up and down. I like the bridge. I kind of noticed that the first couple songs here in the album have a similar structure of bridge where they kind of slow down with some guitar or something and then hit you with a real hard breakdown. And I think that's just such a great way to open up a Pierce the Veil album after the previous album.
Yeah, that breakdown is killer, and there's some super killer breakdowns to come, which brings us to track number 2, Texas is Forever. And this song, for me, kind of culminates a lot of different themes that were addressed in previous albums, and it kind of gives you closure on those while also being one of the most fast and aggressive Pierce the Veil songs to date.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Texas Forever. It was a single, and I had a lot of time to listen to this one before the album came out, and I think it's a really interesting and unique song. I've never really heard something like it. It's fast, but it's not like insanely heavy. It's got some screaming, but it's mostly just a really unique chorus with some. I actually really like the lyrics. It kind of tells an interesting story. And I noticed a lot on this track is just that the production is really solid on this record, and they did some interesting things, and they incorporate synths in interesting ways on some other songs, and I was just a big fan of that going back through.
I was just gonna bring up the same thing, talking about that production. I was thinking when I was listening to this song that it's a faster song for them relatively, and it's pretty heavy. But it even goes along with the theme of this album, kind of, where I think they're shifting to a little bit more production in their music, even in their heavy stuff. So I honestly hadn't thought about that until I ran through this album again. But yeah, I love it's really fast. I wouldn't say this is one of my favorite songs on the record, but it's definitely not a forgettable one. There's a couple on here where if I listen to the album, I don't necessarily forget it's there, but it's not one that I would listen to if I'm just putting it in a playlist. But this one, for sure, is a not forgettable song in this album.
Yeah, you guys have both brought up kind of like a shift in the way Pierce the Veil created this album versus other albums, and I think that a big shift that I noticed, especially going through the record recently, is that this album is a lot less emo than their other records, and also a lot less like heavy and dark as far as just like the melodies go. And I think that that's one thing that maybe has always kind of put me off a little bit on this record. Not to say that I didn't like it, because I've always loved this album, but coming off of their previous albums, which were a little heavier, a little darker, and almost all of these songs have very like major key melodies. So we go into the Divine Zero, which has kind of an interesting story behind it, just because this song came out like well before the album did. This song came out in the summer of like 2015, and this album didn't come out till like May of 2016. So it was like way before all these other songs, and we had like a full 6 months plus to listen to just this, which was kind of odd. But I also remember feeling when I first heard this song that this song kind of encapsulates exactly what Pierce the Veil can be. It's very Pierce the Veil-esque. It's exactly it's like a little time capsule of sounds that they've used before, kind of redone up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Like this song, I definitely at the time felt like it came out like way too early, and it didn't really feel like part of this record as much because of that. I always kind of felt like this was a song that was on Clyde with the Sky, and then they cut it, and then they just threw it on this record. But because it really sounds like that record to me. But I like this song. It's got some of the best melodies, I think, and that's just what I always think about it, is that it is really catchy and does encapsulate Pierce the Veil really well. If I wanted to put on one song for someone, if they want to know what the band is like, I might pick this one, to be honest. It kind of shows all of their eras here on this song.
See, this song is definitely warmed up to me. When it first came out, like you guys said, it came out so long before the album actually came out that it started to not, like, even when I'm listening to this album now, I honestly just skip this song, not because I don't like it, but because I feel like you were saying, it's not really, to me, a part of this album. It kind of feels like some of the older music, but I do love, it's got a lot of beat changes, which is pretty Pierce the Veil-esque, but it's a catchy song. I feel like what turned me off with Texas is Forever is it's fast, it's got some beat changes that kind of throw the pace around, but it wasn't catchy enough for me to, like, every time it changes the pace, I feel like I've just hit a brick wall. So I think this song is definitely warmed up to me, but it's been out for so long as compared to the album, it just feels like I'm listening to Collide with the Sky.
Man, that's kind of a cautionary tale for any bands thinking about releasing a single too early. Fans might associate that with music you released prior versus what you're going to release in the future. And so, yeah, definitely keep those singles. Well, I mean, now people release singles willy-nilly like crazy. Like, that's the new way to do it. And so maybe that advice doesn't apply as much. But, yeah, definitely a little early on this single. Coming up next, we have Floral and Fading, which I think we'll have a lot to talk about here because this is probably the most different sounding song on the whole record. It's definitely a little more chill, a little more vibey. It's kind of just makes you feel like you're young and in love. And I don't know. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's transitioned more into different kinds of music, this one held up the best for me. I've always really loved this song and still do. I love how unique the style is. This is something we've never seen this band do, and I agree. It's not dark and heavy. This is a lot more fun. And I think him yelling Tony before the guitar solo is iconic. If you know anything about the band.
Yeah, it is pretty iconic. I kind of agree and half agree with the most different song in the album. I think it's definitely the most different in terms of genre, but I think in terms of like stylistic choice, the instrumentation, I think I would say that Gold Medal Ribbon is more different, but I'll talk about why I think that's different. But I totally agree. It sounds way different than anything they've ever released. In a good way. I really like this song. I played a high school a show in high school, and I have friends that hate this kind of music, and we played this song. I convinced them because it's just so, it sounds like a pop song, but mixed in with Pierce the Veil stylistic choice. So yeah, this one's really good. I like I think it's about Vic's girlfriend who was receiving a bunch of hate from fans just for dating Vic. And so I think the lyrics hold up with that message. I like the line. It says, picture you and I selling daylight for gasoline. He's talking about if they just ran away and forgot it all and just lived for each other. And I think that's such a great message.
Yeah, wow, I didn't even know that about this song. I think I've always struggled a little bit with this song just because, my metal roots, I've always been kind of like, I want my Pierce the Veil gritty and dark, but it's listening this time around, I had a much better experience with Floral and Fading. I think it's a great song, and especially like if you're trying to show Pierce the Veil to someone who doesn't like heavy music, show them Floral and Fading. They'll probably really like it. But now we enter Song 5, Phantom Power and Lucrative Speed, which I think I've always used to gloss over this one. I never thought it was that strong of a song, but this time around, this was one of my favorites listening to it. I think that it's got some great breakdowns, some really good one-liners. The lyrics are just phenomenal in this song. I think that maybe the thing that throws it off for a lot of people, including myself a little bit, is the chorus is a little weak, I'd say. Number one, I don't even really know what he's talking about. And number two, it's just not as catchy as a lot of the other choruses on this album or albums prior. So I would say that I enjoyed it a lot, though, this time around.
Yeah, I've always thought this was an underrated deep cut. Looking at the streams, it has some of the lowest streams, but I have liked this song. It's a heavier one, faster one, and I agree the lyrics have some good one-liners. And you said it. I don't really know if it means anything though, as far as I could tell. It's kind of all over the place, and because it doesn't have a centralized theme, I think that's why it gets glossed over. Honestly, there's a lot of other songs you know exactly what it's about, and here that's just not the case. It's just kind of a fun romp, but. I do like this song. I really like the outro section, and they're really good at slowing it down sometimes.
So I agree with you guys. I had no clue what this song was about. I feel like the lyrics are a little all over the place. So I looked it up because some of the other songs I feel like you can pick it up pretty quick or you can kind of make some inferences. But Vic talks about this being, he wrote the song about the pressure of writing the songs and how the fans were pressuring him and labels to get things out on deadlines or do things a certain way, which I guess you could apply to the song. But as someone who, I even consider myself a really big fan of this band, I kind of disagree because I think 4 years was quite a long time to still keep me reeled into this band to release a song about the timeline here. But Yeah, the lyrics were all over the place, but I really like this song. It kind of feels to me like an embodiment of Selfish Machines, but just better. Like they just polished it up, their sound. It seems
Yeah.
like, even though you're saying this is kind of like a deep cut, it seems like this song you can show it off as kind of where Pierce the Veil is going.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't recognize it until you said it, but it really does sound like a Selfish Machine song.
Yeah.
Just with better production. And speaking of production, you never realize how bad album production is until you listen to it right next to one of their newer albums.
Yep.
You go back and listen to Selfish Machines. I love those songs, but man, the mixes aren't great.
Yeah.
But we continue moving on to number 6, which is Circles, and this was probably, is this the most streamed song? It is,
It
right?
is, yeah.
It's got 50,000, which I did want to talk about the stream count a little bit and the record sales. We always enjoyed this album growing up, but I think that it was hit with a little bit of a backlash because Pierce the Veil was pretty dead center in a pretty heavy scene. And it's not as heavy, it's not as dark, it's a little more, it's a happier album, not in terms of like lyrics, I would say, but just feel. And I don't think that this album performed as well as some of the others. I mean, if you look back on their previous album, Collide with the Sky, King for a Day had 200,000 or 200 million
Whoa.
plays versus the highest one on this one has 55,000 or million. So yeah, it's something to think about and something to look at, which is really interesting. None of these songs hit their top 5 on Spotify, even though I think that a lot of them are really great. And Circles was a huge single for them. In fact, they played this song on Conan, which is kind of like a little breakthrough into the real world, which I think is cool. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I like this song. I remember when this single dropped, and I was impressed at how catchy and poppy it was, but still maintaining that guitar-driven feel. And I think it definitely it makes sense to me why this is the most streamed, and like you were talking about with the stream count, this one's definitely a step down with Climb the Sky, and Climb the Sky will probably always be their most famous and popular album, but it's definitely got a lot more streams than Selfish Machines, and this album I remember was well received critically, and people that like it, but the PTV fans, they definitely stick with Climb the Sky for the most part. But I do like this song.
I just think that Collide with the Sky was released in such a great time for them where the scene was still pretty big, and I feel like it's been diminishing a little bit. And so when they released this album, I think they got hit with two problems because, one, I think a lot of people are just leaving the heavier scene. It's not as big as it used to be. But I also think that since they also transitioned a little bit away from the heavy scene, they haven't gotten that audience of people who are kind of still moving in, which isn't very common anymore. So for me, I think that this album was a step up, but I think just the way that it was released as compared to Collide with the Sky, it's just not going to compare with the stream counts. But I do really like this song. I think it's pretty Floral and Fading-esque. Those two songs are kind of pretty similar to me. They got the not so heavy breakdown, especially Circles has got the slow bridge going back into a chorus. So to me, I really like this song, but it's definitely a different genre taste for this band.
Yeah, wasn't this song about like terrorist attacks in France or something like that?
Yeah. It's pretty. And when you learn about that and you re-listen to it and listen to the lyrics, it's got such a different message. It goes from this really upbeat, happy song, and then when you're listening to the lyrics, it's just really, really haunting, which I think matches their lyrical style, but the song was definitely brighter.
So now, let's move into, we're kind of in the second half of the record here. Today I Saw the Whole World, which is probably, in my opinion, this is like the most Collide with the Sky sounding song on the album. It's heavy, it's fast paced. And I really enjoy this song, especially the chorus. I think that this is one of the most solid choruses they have. It's so catchy, it's so fun. And I remember when it came out, I remember the band saying that they wrote this song picturing it as like a song that they could play at like football games and stuff, which I don't agree with at all. I think that that would be super weird, but it is funny that they said that. What do you guys have to say about Today I Saw the Whole World?
Yeah, I remember that quote, and I agree that it doesn't seem quite right, but I do like the song. I've always liked the song. It's the first time I heard the record. It's got a lot of energy, and I agree that I think the chorus here is really, really strong and some really catchy melodies, especially on that breakdown section, which is probably the most iconic part of the song, is really catchy.
Yeah, I think I heard that quote too. I was watching like an interview and it really threw me off. I was like, I don't know about that. I think you're reaching a little too far. That's a different style you're going for. But no, I really like this song. I think one thing I noticed about this song is Pierce the Veil usually has lots of guitars layered. I've heard an interview where they talk about how Vic and Tony need to discuss who's going to play what guitar part and what are they leaving out when they play live shows because they just have so many layers of guitar. But in this song, you can really hear a very prominent guitar lead like throughout the whole song. So I noticed that, which is definitely different. It definitely sounds more like Collide with the Sky. If Phantom Power and Ludicrous Speed was the embodiment of Selfish Machines, this is definitely a better version of Collide with the Sky for me.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts on Gold Medal Ribbon, which is the next song, because I think that I don't have a ton to say about it other than I think that it's a great song and has some really good melodies, but I just never connected with it as much as I think you may have. So why don't you just take that one away, Matt?
Yeah, I really like this song. It's got another unique style into this is their more 80s style sound, I feel. I remember on one review I was reading when the album came out, they compared this to the Tears for Fears, this song. And I think I haven't always connected as much with the song simply because of just the lyrics never really grabbed me fully. I couldn't really like put myself into a situation with this song as much, but I like the way it sounds a lot. I love when it slows down in the bridge section. They do a really good job on just making it sound great. The production here is really good.
You know, I really like this song, this album. I feel like this is a deep cut for me. But I don't really have a lot to say about it. It's got the 80s style guitar and synths, which is pretty different. It's pretty cool. Definitely gives it a different feel in the album. But I don't have a lot to say about it. I just think it was a solid song, not necessarily the best on the album, but I wouldn't say there's really a bad song on this album, but it's more forgettable than the rest, even though it's more different.
So real quick here, you mentioned you wouldn't say that Gold Medal Ribbon is your favorite song. What would you say is your favorite song on this record?
It's hard to say because there's a couple songs on here that don't really sound super Pierce the Veil, and so I feel like if I choose it, I'm not really staying true to this album. I think Circles is one of the best ones, but it's definitely more poppy. If I were to say one that's much more like Pierce the Veil, I think Dive In is probably the best one on the album. It's very fast. It's got a lot of time changes, like beat changes, which is pretty typical of this band. So probably either Dive In or Circles.
Yeah, and how about you, Matt?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. One doesn't jump out to me as my favorite. I think for a long time I would say Song for Isabel, which we haven't talked about yet. Coming back to it now, I don't have any problem saying that the PTV style doesn't capture me as much, and I definitely lean towards the poppy ones. I love Circles still. That's probably the one I would come back to the most. if it came onto my shuffle, I wouldn't skip it. But I don't know if I would listen to every single one of these songs. It really depends on my mood to get into something heavy for me. Uh, and I think Song for Isabel probably has the most memories for me, and it's probably the one I think of when I think of this record. So I probably have to just stick with that.
What about you, Max? Which one is your favorite here?
I would definitely say Song for Isabel, which we'll get to in a second, and I'll kind of explain my thought process later. But let's jump into Bedless. One thing I did want to mention before we talk about the sound of this song is, I don't know if you guys remember, but a couple days before the album came out, before even the album Medley came out, Pierce the Veil released the track titles. And so they released all the names of the songs that were going to be on the record. And for Bedless, I don't know who I don't remember who I don't know who messed up here, but someone wrote Beatles. Spelled someone wrote Beatles instead of Bedless, and I remember looking at that and being like, Beatles? What? That's kind of a weird name. I wonder what that's gonna sound like.
I remember that.
Yeah, and then they released like a revised version with Bedless, and we were like, still kind of weird, but okay. But Bedless is, in my opinion, a good song, but it's a little more forgettable as far as melodies go. I really like the bridge. I think that the imagery of, this person crying in the shower with all their clothes on, and feeling like they're completely falling apart. It was pretty cool to me, but it's, the chorus and everything, I just don't think it hit as hard. So what do you guys think?
I agree with a lot of what you said. Every time I'm listening to this song, I'm like, wow, this is a really good song. Why don't I give this as much credit? But as soon as I'm not listening to the record, why this is probably the most forgettable for me, and I think why is the chorus is probably the weakest on the record, even though I think a lot of other parts of the song is really strong. Like you said, the lyrics are great, some great imagery, some really interesting guitar and style. But the chorus, yeah, is just, I can't even remember it, and that's just really the problem. And one thing I really noticed going back to this record is how much synth is on this record, which is, they've always used synth, but not to this extent, and there's a lot of synths on this song, and they're actually all really good, and I think add a lot to the record.
See, I kind of disagree. This is definitely not a forgettable song for me. This is probably closer to one of my favorites. I definitely wouldn't say so, but I love this song. I love the surfer kind of style guitar. Like you said, Max, the bridge, I feel like that's one of the hardest hitting bridges of Pierce the Veil songs. It's not as heavy, but I think the imagery and the build up for the chorus is just, it's definitely really amazing. The chorus, I could kind of agree, it's not super memorable, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily bad. I definitely like this song. There's some songs on this album that I definitely forget about until I come back to it, but I definitely don't forget about this song.
Yeah, the chorus is not bad. I agree.
Yeah, I don't think any song on here is bad, or any of the choruses are bad. I think sometimes catchiness comes into play, where it's like, especially if you have a lot of catchy songs already and then you write one that's just a little less catchy, it's easy to gloss over it. And I think that happens a little bit with this next song, just because it does lie towards the bottom, which is usually where people kind of stop paying attention as much. But I actually really like track number 10, which is Sambuca. I remember when this album came out, and I saw the name Sambuca, and I was like, oh yeah, this one's gonna be heavy. And I put it on, and I was right, and it was heavy, and I was so excited until I realized that the song was only 2.5 minutes, by far the shortest song on the album, and I was kind of pissed off that they made one of their heaviest songs barely song length. But I like a lot of things about this song. I like when they talk about him hanging himself in lights, is a really interesting imagery and a good metaphor, and I think the breakdown where he says "Welcome to Southern California, now go back home" is really funny, and it was really good.
Yeah, I was worried I was gonna be the contrarian on this one because this has the least streams on the record. It's least popular song, but for me, this was in the running for me of my favorite song. This song is so interesting to me, and like you said, it's really short, and I've never experienced a song, leaving me wanting more this bad. I want an extended version of this song more than any other song I've ever heard. It's not long enough, and that's honestly, it's to its credit. It makes the song better knowing that really catchy chorus, that blessing and a curse melody is probably my favorite on the entire record, and I just want more of it, and they only give two choruses on this record, and I think the heavy stuff they do incorporate here is my favorite on the record too. I love how they do it, and yeah, I'm surprised this has such low streams. I absolutely love this song.
Well, geez, I feel like I'm kind of the black sheep here because I don't like this song. It's, I think it's a
How
good
dare
song.
you?
I think it's a good song. But the length is definitely difficult because you get into it and then it ends and you feel like you didn't really get enough. But it's got some good screaming. It's definitely a good heavy song. But if I want to listen to a heavier song from Pierce the Veil, I kind of just go back to Collide with the Sky. When I hear this song, it's definitely a skip for me. I Part of it is definitely the length though. That kind of ruins it for me, but I kind of agree with the streams here. I don't know if this is one of my favorite ones.
That's fair, except for "You're Dead to Me Now." Um, the final song here is "Song for Isabel," which is my absolute favorite. I love this song. I think when I think of a good closer, like a theatrical closer that's like big and a big finale, I think of this song. "Song for Isabel" is it touches on like so many good sounds and themes from the record and kind of gives them a good finish. And I really, really like the bridge and the breakdown here. I think that it does both, where it's like it gives you a soft bridge and a heavy breakdown, um, with some great lyrics. And so for me, like I could listen to this song over and over. It was perfect for me. But what did you guys think?
Yeah, this is the song that for me made it my favorite album for a long time, and I agree. This is my like gold standard of closers. This is like the only other song that I think is a perfect closer. I love kind of just going on with a long song, just going on a journey where he just tells a story, and you can just kind of get enveloped in it and get lost in that kind of world. It's a great experience, and I agree. This combines a lot of different elements. It's got slower, softer stuff, and then heavier stuff, and I think they pull it off really well. And this is like the emotional closer of a song on this record, and yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, well, kind of going along with the progression of Pierce the Veil, I think they had a great opener with Hell Above and its opener song in Collide with the Sky. Great closer with Hold On Till May, but I just think that the opener and the closer for this album were just so much better. I definitely come back to these more. Song for Isabel definitely has one of the best bridges from this band. Like you said, it's got the slow parts and the really hard, heavy build up to some pretty good breakdown. Yeah, I just love this song. I don't have a lot to say about it, but the production is great. There's a lot of strings and synths, which is a little different for this band, but I think this is definitely one of the best songs from Pierce the Veil.
Yeah, well, let's kind of wrap this conversation up with our general thoughts about the album Misadventures. I'll go first. I think that before this album, when you picture Pierce the Veil, you kind of picture a bunch of 17-year-olds listening in their mom's basement with the lights off. And this whole album makes me feel like I'm in a beach house, kind of just hanging out and having a good time. I think this album is really great. It's so fun. I wouldn't say it's not personally my favorite Pierce the Veil album just because of nostalgia. I think I go for older stuff. But as far as production goes, I think this one knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, this is my favorite Percival album. I have the most memories tied to it, listening to it, right when it came out and for years after. I was worried coming back to this it wouldn't hold up as well. I don't listen to heavy stuff as much anymore, but I still really liked it, and all the memories of the song just came back, and I still have a good opinion of this band and these songs. And when they drop their next album, if they ever do, I will be there listening to that as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that this is my favorite album, but it's definitely a toss-up. I think the genre, even though it sounds still like Percival, it's such a different album than what they've released before. And so it's hard for me to say if I'd pick this over Collide with the Sky, just because it's just so different. But I think it's an amazing album, definitely one of my favorite albums. Yeah, I just think this one's great. I think the production is great. I think that it's a great move for the band to move into a different space that they weren't in before, and so I'm really excited to, if they ever, release anything ever again, I would be there.
Well, you've both kind of talked about, you're kind of teasing us a little bit. You said, like, if they ever release. It's been, 5 years now? 5 and some change since Misadventures came out. I can confirm that they have recorded the entire album, and they're just waiting to release it. They have another album. They just aren't doing anything
I
with
need
it.
a release date to believe it at this
Yeah.
point. All right? That's what I'm doing.
Just the other day, Vic posted on Instagram that he hit a Wayne's World reference in the new album.
That's good.
Well, I was listening to someone else talk about this album beforehand, and he was talking about how he had waited so long since Collide with the Sky, and he's like, man, I really hope the next album comes out faster. And I just thought, wow, that's pretty unfortunate. But, give me the release date, and I'll be there.
Yeah, I can't say I'll be as excited as I was back when I was waiting for
sure.
Misadventures.
Mm-hmm.
I'll listen to it, and I'll probably like it a lot, but I'm not super, I'm not going to be counting down the days. When it comes, it comes, and I'll be happy about it. But it's kind of been a little long for me to be this excited about Percival. Anyways, Simon, thank you for joining us. That was a good conversation.
Yeah.
I liked having you here. We'll have to have you on more frequently because I think that it went super well. And thank you to anyone who's been listening to this or listening to some of our other episodes. Please go check out our Collide with the Sky episode, which we did a little while ago. We'll try to get to some other Percival albums. We had a comment a few videos ago saying that they wanted us to do more Percival reviews.
Wow.
So if that person who comments doesn't comment on this one, I'm going to say you're a fake fan and get out of here. But if you do comment, I love you. Thank you for staying. Big kisses coming your way. But again, if you don't comment, I hate you. Thanks. Bye.
See ya.